Well, good evening. Well, it'd be certainly appropriate if you were watching this in the evening with a nice, beautiful starlit sky outside. In fact, I would recommend that if you can watch this on your smartphone, go outside, just admire the stars while you do this. Just keep in mind your smartphone does produce light pollution. Anyway, stuff in the sky. So, what is it up there that we're interested in? Well, constellations. We've talked about constellations. We'll be talking a lot about constellations every single class period. They are originally constellations were made up by ancient cultures as a way to tell their kids and pass on to their kids mythology, stories, and so forth of heroes and whatnot. So they were named by ancient cultures, primarily in the form of heroes, gods, mythical beasts, and so on. And they originate over 5,000 years ago. Basically, they were loose groupings of stars, and different cultures came up with different constellations, although some of them, of course, were identified similarly, especially over in the Near East, which is what we consider the Middle East now, and Europe. There's a lot of trade between the two areas, and so they had a lot of similarities in their constellation names, or in their constellation stories even. Trouble is that it's unwieldy. So today, astronomers have retained some of this, but instead what they've done is they've designated 88 official constellations with clear boundaries. Like I said, it was kind of like if the entire night sky were a map of the 48 contiguous lower U.S. states. Each constellation is a state, and each state bounds other constellations or other states. And that's pretty much how the sky is broken up. So it's not just a group of stars, but an area in the sky which allows astronomers to identify where something is. So a galaxy, which is not a part of a group of stars, traditionally thought of as a constellation, would be within the constellation such and such, instead of just saying it's somewhere near Andromeda. So the Andromeda galaxy actually sits in a constellation. So it's important for referencing other objects like those galaxies and so forth. Some of these constellations are not historical. They come from the southern hemisphere in many cases, and those southern hemisphere constellations don't have mythologies really associated with them. They're just made up more recently, or the Renaissance or later. So there are some of those. Here's an example of a constellation. You're looking at Draco, and these are the boundaries of Draco, and you can see that Draco bounds other constellations. There's Cepheus and so forth, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, and so forth. You can see there's a variety of, you can see the Greek letters as well, designating the brightness of the stars, also indicated by the size of the dot. But you can see there's a variety of other objects within Draco. And so we can say that this object, 6543, whatever it is, and off the top of my head I can't remember, but whatever it is within the constellation Draco, so we can identify exactly where it is. Asterisms. Now there's another term that you probably heard at some point, maybe. Asterism, and that's just a less formally defined grouping of stars. And these really are just groupings of stars. And they're traditional, but they're kind of fun. The astronomers don't use them for a whole lot, but they're fun for people to talk about, and it makes it easier to find certain things sometimes as well. The Big Dipper is one of these. Big Dipper is actually part of the constellation Ursa, some of the stars in the constellation Ursa Major, but we recognize the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, which is actually part of Ursa Minor, as asterisms. So they're less formal groups of stars. The Great Square of Pegasus, the Southern Triangle. There's a variety of these. Here's a bunch of them. The Northern Cross. So these are bright stars. Once you identify this asterism, then it's easier to find, whatever constellations you're looking for. The Keystone. Obviously, there's some that are less well known. There's the Teapot's relatively well known, but the Bowl of Poniatowski is not exactly I don't even know where that came from. Job's Coffin's not really, again, I couldn't tell you anything about those, but there's a bunch of them out there. Here's some more. Great Square of Pegasus, and so on and so forth. Okay, now, stars and constellations, once upon a time, the ancients saw the night sky as being fixed, and all these little dots were just holes in the firmament through which light shone. And so they're all the same distance away. We know, of course, that they're not. So if we're here on Earth, and we're looking at the stars of the asterism, the Big Dipper, each one of these stars is a different distance away. This one's 93 light years, 69 light years, 360 light years, and so forth. So they're all different distances away from us, but they just so happen to be in the right position in the sky that they look like they go together into a group of stars. So when it comes to constellations and their groups of stars, they're really just unique to the Earth. If you went to some other planet in some other star system, say Alpha Centauri even, um, your night sky would look very, very different. So Earth's night sky is unique to Earth. And, okay, it's not that different in other parts of the solar system as well. But again, if you go to some other part of the galaxy, you have a completely different night sky. Now, how do we name stars? We talked about this a little bit. There are some bright stars like Sirius, Aldebaran, Betelgeuse, and so forth that have traditional names given by ancient astronomers, which a lot of them are Latin, but sometimes have Arabic origin. And so, of course, the Arabic, the Arabs back in the day were known for their learning, and actually they preserved a lot of the learning during the Dark Ages, along with Catholic monks in Europe, when kings in Europe were fighting each other. And anyway, that's history for you. But so they mean something. So Betelgeuse actually means the armpit of Jazza, which is the upper. It's one of the upper shoulder bits of Orion, the hunter, and so that makes sense. Okay, so here's an ancient Arabic manuscript showing you Sagittarius and Capricornus, just to show you that these constellations go back quite a ways. So now, though, we give them a different. We name them a little differently. We name stars in a more objective way, based on their relative or apparent brightness, and using Greek letters. So that, of course, means we're limited to the first 24 brightest stars. But to be honest with you, the naked eye can only see stars of a magnitude +4 and less. And we'll talk about magnitudes here coming up. But basically, 24 stars is more than your eye is going to be able to see in most any constellation. So, but they're named by an organization called the International Astronomical Union, who meets every couple of years. They're the ones who demoted Pluto a few years ago, so you can dislike them or like them. But then the Greek letter is followed by the genitive form or the possessive form of the constellation name, because that constellation possesses those stars. So the brightest star in Canis Major is known as Alpha Canis Majoris. Here's an example of a constellation again. Again, just showing you the Greek letters. Hydra. This is the first one we made a card for. All right, and we'll stop there for today. We'll pick up with the celestial sphere with the next batch. Have a great evening.